Okay.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, March 12th. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont. And our weather. Breezy and much colder today, cloudy, then clouds and sun with a snow shower, a high of 36. Becoming cloudy tonight, a low of 27. A couple of showers or rain, snow tomorrow, a high of 44. Saturday, low clouds, then perhaps some sun, a high of 35. And Sunday looks like possibility of a bit of snow in the morning, a high of 49 and a low of 39. And nationally, the high was in McAllen, Texas, 94. The low in Lake Yellowstone, Wyoming, minus 12. Sunrise today at 7:33 a.m. Sunset at 7:18 p.m. And the snow derby, Syracuse continues to, or this is not the derby, but I'm just looking at it from a statewide perspective. And Syracuse is in the lead with 133 inches, followed by Rochester with 107, Jamestown with 97, and Buffalo fourth with 87 inches year to date. And now we will go to see what our front page news is. And it's an analysis by Joe Campbell of Associated Press. Iran war comes down to who is capable of enduring pain longer. The war with Iran, for all its complexity and global effects, boils down to a single question: who can take the pain the longest? A surge in oil prices points to what may be Iran's most effective weapon and the United States' biggest vulnerability in continuing the campaign. Damaging the world economy, a sharp rise in gas prices has rattled consumers and financial markets, and international travel and shipping have been severely disrupted. President Trump appears aware of the danger as oil jumped nearly to $120 a barrel on Monday, the highest since 2022. He suggested the war would be short-term. That helped reassure markets, and the price eased to around 90, even as Trump, nearly in the same breath, vowed to keep up the war and the punishment on Iran. On the other side, Iran has to endure a near constant stream of American and Israeli strikes it can't defend against. So far, the Islamic Republic is still in control, with leadership passing from the Ayatollah slain in the war's opening strikes to his son. Although its military has been hit extensively, it continues to launch missiles and drones across the region. The Iranian Republic, which already rose up against its theocracy in nationwide protests in January, still boils in anger, but have stayed home as they try to survive the heavy bombardment. Security forces have been on the street every day to ensure anti-government demonstrations form. The pressure is on U.S. allies as well. Gulf Arab states, while still not combatants in the war, face seemingly unending and occasionally fatal Iranian fire targeting oil fields, cities, and critical waterworks. And in Israel, while boasting of inflicting heavy damage on Iran's missile program and other military targets, continues to be targeted by increasingly sophisticated Iranian missiles that send a buckshot-like bouquet of high explosives raining down on its cities. Frequent air raid sirens have disrupted daily life, closed schools and workplaces, and created a tense atmosphere across the region. There's no immediate end to the war in sight, nor in the rhetoric coming from both America and Iran, whose bad blood extends back decades to the 1979 Islamic Revolution and the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis. We've already won in many ways, but we haven't won enough, Trump said in a speech Monday. We go forward more determined than ever to achieve ultimate victory that will end this long-running danger once and for all. Iranian Foreign Ministry official Kazim Garibabadi offered a mirror image comment from Tehran, boasting that the Islamic Republic had rejected contacts about a ceasefire that he said had come from China, France, Russia, and others. At the moment, we hold the upper hand, he said. He told Iranian state television late Monday night, just look at the state of the global economy and energy markets. It has been very painful for them. He asserted that it was Iran that will determine the end of the war. For years before Israel and the U.S. launched the war on February 28th, Iran warned that if attacked, it would retaliate on the entire Middle East, targeting the oil infrastructure that made its Gulf Arab neighbors fantastically wealthy. By contrast, Tehran's economy has been crippled by international sanctions. Iran has now backed up its threat with barrages of missiles and drones. Qatar was forced to halt its production of natural gas, and Bahrain declared its oil operations couldn't meet their contractual obligations. Other producers like Saudi Aramco are affected, disrupting a key source of energy for Asia, particularly China, which has sent a top envoy to the region. Shipping broadly has stopped in the strategic Strait of Hormuz, the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf through which 20% of oil, and natural gas traded passes, and up to 30% of world fertilizer exports. Iran didn't need to mine the waterway. Its attacks on several ships prompted companies to stop sending their vessels through the strait. Trump has suggested U.S. warships providing escorts to tankers, but that has yet to materialize in a way to restart the traffic. Early Tuesday, he threatened that if Iran stops the oil through the strait, they will be hit by the United States of America 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far. Additionally, we will take out easily destroyable targets that will make it virtually impossible for Iran to ever be built back as a nation. Again, death, fire, and fury will rain upon them, but I hope and pray that it does not happen, he wrote in his Truth Social platform. Iran, however, only doubled down. The Revolutionary Guard warned on Tuesday that it won't allow a single liter of oil to leave the Persian Gulf. For Iran's theocratic rulers, victory means surviving the campaign, still in power, no matter the cost to the country and the region. Trump has been vague and contradictory about his aims in the war. At times, he seems to push for overthrowing Iran's theocracy. Other times, he seems to be willing to stop short of that, saying broadly that he wants to ensure Iran is no longer a threat to Israel, the region, and the U.S. That could give him flexibility in declaring that victory has been achieved, especially if real damage starts to show the U.S. economy. But if the war stopped right now, both the U.S. and Israel would be left with major challenges. One is Iran's leadership. After an Israeli airstrike killed 86-year-old Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei at the start of the war, Iranian clerics named his 56-year-old son, Mojtaba, to the position, elevating him to the rank of an Ayatollah. Now, Iran's ultimate ruler, the younger Khamenei, has long been viewed by analysts as being even more hard-line than his father, with close ties to the paramilitary Revolutionary Guard. Israel has already described him as a target in its campaign, while Trump has said he wanted someone else in the role. Also, Iran still has a stockpile of highly enriched uranium, one reason for the war that Israel and the U.S. have both pointed to. Iran had been enriching up to 60% purity, a short technical step away from weapons-grade levels of 90%. The U.S. bombed 3 Iranian nuclear sites in June during the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, likely burying much of the stockpile in the debris. Those sites to this day remain out of reach of international inspectors. Mojtaba Khamenei could issue a religious ruling or fatwa reversing his father's earlier statements and ordering it to be used to make a weapon. That's something both America and Israel long believed to be the Mideast's only nuclear-armed state don't want to see.
UB and Broadview reach $31 million naming rights deal. This is by Mike Petro, who's a news staff reporter. The University of Buffalo has reached a corporate sponsorship deal for naming rights to its football stadium and basketball arena with an Albany credit union that is building its presence in Western New York. The $31 million 15-year partnership with Albany-based Broadview Federal Credit Union is the largest naming rights deal in the Mid-American Conference, according to UB, and averages out to be a little more than $2 million a year. UB's athletic department has been discussing naming rights as a revenue stream for at least the past year, and now has finalized a deal that is a major boost for the school as it navigates a changed college athletics landscape that includes paying college athletes and revenue sharing. The deal also includes naming rights to an athletic village on campus and funding for student scholarships and a student emergency fund. As a result of the partnership, the 30,000-seat capacity UB Stadium, which hosts football, soccer, track, and field, as well as large events for the UB community, will be renamed Broadview Stadium. Meanwhile, Alumni Arena, the 6,000-seat home of men's and women's basketball, women's volleyball, and the school's wrestling teams, will be renamed Broadview Arena. This transformative campus-wide partnership allows us to successfully compete at the highest level through a sustained investment into our athletics programs, said Mark Alnut, Vice President and Director of Athletics at UB. By establishing a long-term partnership with Broadview, we're able to work side by side with a like-minded organization as we continue to support the needs of the Western New York community, he added. UB opted into revenue sharing as part of the House versus NCAA settlement proposal that allows Division I schools to pay college athletes in addition to name, image, and likeness opportunities for athletes. Schools that participate or opt in now have to provide revenue sharing between $20 and $30 million with the players. While the partnership dollars in the deal don't reach the levels of similar agreements with some of the biggest college athletics programs in the nation, the money is comparable to other deals for non-Power IV conferences, and there are only a few other deals like it at this point for MAC schools. Florida Atlantic University, a school like UB that is not in a Power IV conference, signed a 15-year naming rights deal worth $22.5 million or $1.5 million a year to rename its stadium Flagler Credit Union Stadium 2 years ago, but it does not include the school's arena naming rights. The University of Akron's football stadium, which opened in 2009, is named Infocision Stadium Summa Field after a naming rights partnership was secured with Infocision Management Company and Summa Health System worth $15 million over 20 years. But Akron and UB are rare right now among MAC schools. Many stadiums in the conference are named for alumni who made multi-million-dollar donations or as an honor for their contributions to the college and its athletic program. Other MAC schools, like the University of Toledo, are actively seeking a strategic naming rights partner for their football stadiums. Recent Power 4 conference school deals are longer term and include more money, but not that much more than what was secured by UB. Last year, the University of Arizona secured a 20-year, $60 million naming rights agreement for its football stadium to rename it Casino del Sol Stadium, an enterprise of the Pascua Yaqui tribe, while Indiana University landed a 20-year, $50 million naming rights deal for its football venue to become Merchants Bank Stadium. For Broadview, the deal continues to expand its presence in the Buffalo area and builds on the credit union's more than decade-long relationship with UB. Broadview has branches in western New York and across upstate and maintains a branch location in the heart of UB's North Campus in Amherst, where the stadium and arena are located.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour, and we will go to our editorial. A complex issue. It's the same old story. New York is a ridiculously expensive state, and that's why people are leaving. A familiar round of finger pointing, or at least pointed comments, emerged from interviewees in two recent stories by News' Stephen Watson on New York State's population losses over the past 5 years. It went like this. The trend should be a wake-up call for New York's elected leaders, starting with Governor Hochul and New York City Mayor Mondami, said Bill Hammond of the fiscally conservative Empire Center for Public Policy. And I just feel like the future for Florida looks just a lot brighter, no pun intended, said Matt Braun, who was involved in Republican Party politics here before he moved south. You've got to have good quality of life and affordability, and all of that relates to taxes and, for businesses, taxes and regulations, said Dottie Gallagher, President and CEO of Buffalo Niagara Partnership. Fair enough, it's true, as Watson reported, that New York has lost more residents, 120,000, than every state except California since 2020. Though the numbers are slowly rebounding upward, it's also true that states gaining population like Florida and Texas have no state income tax. The housing shortage really goes to the heart of the matter. Within 2021 to 2024, New York issuing only 9 housing permits per 1,000 residents compared with Florida 34 plus. But before we get rid of Hochul, Mondami, and every other elected Democrat, all of whom, according to most Republican leaders, must share the blame for New York's population woes, there are factors behind the broad numbers that tell a complicated story. Finger-pointing won't fix any of it. First, there are big regional disparities. By far, the lion's share of the state's population decline was experienced in New York City, with many people moving to different parts of the state as well as migrating to other states. According to an Empire Center report, some counties have even experienced population growth between 2020 and 2024, with Erie having only a modest decline of minus 0.2%. This won't stop the state from losing possible congressional seats or electoral votes, both major concerns, but New York City has very specific issues that statewide solutions are unlikely to touch. Second, the taxing structure is more complex than it seems. Reports that look at state taxes as a whole miss how taxes are distributed. According to data from the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, a nonpartisan tax policy organization, in 2024, New York ranked 4th in a list of the most equitable and least regressive in its taxing behind the District of Columbia, Minnesota, and Vermont. New York, though it also practices regressive taxing, is one of only a handful of states that have their lowest tax rates apply to the lowest income earners. By contrast, Florida has the most regressive state tax system in the nation, with low-income families paying rates that are almost 5 times more than the wealthy and middle-income families paying 3 times more. A regressive tax system is great if you're at the upper end of the income spectrum, because regressive systems pride themselves on avoiding income taxes, depending on sales taxes and other levies based on consumption, which take a much higher income percentage from the poorest payers. Of course, this only makes a difference to those who think a tax system should at least try for fairness. Third, immigrants have traditionally boosted New York's population and workforce. The Trump administration has made that relied upon growth difficult, if not impossible. A change in the nation's current xenophobic immigration policies can't come soon enough. And finally, on housing, both Democrats and Republicans should do the work to ease regulations. Some municipalities have made building new housing harder, even imposing bans, which piles on to an already difficult regulatory structure. That needs to end. Housing should be a common goal. The need is urgent, and action should be aggressive. Rather than a blame game, leaders of both parties should work together on what can be fixed to make New York a better place to live for those at every income level.
Our Another Voice article is on health care and is written by Dan Savitt, who is president and CEO of the VNS Health. Western New York's long-term care being tested. For seniors like Central Cheektowaga's Timothy Green, stability in long-term care isn't a policy debate. It's the difference between living safely at home or losing independence in an institution. That stability is now at risk because of how New York State pays for the essential care and services Timothy needs. Much of New York's long-term care system operates through Medicaid-managed long-term care plans. MLTC connects seniors and people with disabilities to hands-on home care, transportation to doctors, and other daily supports that allow them to live independently. For Timothy, who faced major life changes and health complications after diabetes led to the amputation of his legs, our VNS Health MLTC plan has been a stabilizing force. Today, he lives safely at home and is confident in knowing his care team is there to support him. When recent state policy changes led to the closure or transition of several MLTC plans in Western New York, VNS Health worked with state and regional partners to protect continuity of care for more than 3,000 local residents and 12,000 of our neighbors across upstate New York. Unfortunately, this kind of care is in serious jeopardy. New York's payment system rewards plans whose members have fewer needs, while plans caring for people with complex medical and care needs are left struggling to cover the cost of care. Some plans take advantage, enrolling tens of thousands of people who require relatively few services. This costs taxpayers billions. That's not how we do things at VNS Health. We are a long-standing state nonprofit dedicated to the health and well-being of the people we serve, but no organization can operate if funding does not cover the real cost of care. Instead of fixing these distortions, New York is reinforcing them. If these funding disparities persist, and if Albany continues to fail in closing these gaps, seniors and people with disabilities like Timothy will end up paying the higher price. Thankfully, there is a fix. Legislation has been introduced to ensure that high-quality MLTC plans serving New Yorkers with the greatest needs are funded appropriately. Our lawmakers must include this legislation in the state budget and ensure that long-term health care remains stable in Buffalo and across Western New York.
And our editorial cartoon is from Michael Ramirez of Creators Syndicate. It is one frame. It is two pilots flying in the plane, And on the back of on the wall is the sign, "Do not forget daylight savings time." And the one pilot says to the other, "Iran has chosen to turn back their clocks to 1979.
Our first opinion piece is by Caitlin Buss, who's from the Detroit News. The president's political battle is at home. Donald Trump has chosen to govern as a wartime president, but history shows that military strength abroad rarely saves a president who is losing control of the political battlefield at home. Trump's campaign against Iran, from airstrikes on strategic targets to the killing of the top Iranian leadership, has quickly become the defining moment of his presidency. But like other modern presidents, he now has to split his attention between reshaping a volatile region overseas while confronting more stubborn economic frustrations at home. It is the second task that will likely determine the trajectory of his presidency and ultimately his legacy. Polls show many Americans believe their economic circumstances haven't improved. Groceries remain expensive. Rent and mortgage payments are still squeezing families. Credit card debt has climbed to record levels as households try to keep pace with rising prices. For voters, headlines about war in the Middle East may dominate the news, but the daily experience of affordability is what shapes how Americans judge their leaders. Unlike past wartime presidents, Trump governs in an era dominated by social media and constant economic and emotional awareness. Americans can follow breaking developments overseas in real time, while simultaneously holding congressional hearings, demanding information about UFOs and the Epstein files, and venting about groceries on their phones. That dynamic is critical as the November midterms approach. Trump is effectively on the ballot. If Republicans lose the House in November, a very possible scenario, Democrats would most certainly move quickly toward investigations and renewed impeachment efforts. Trump has a matter of months to rally voters back to the America First agenda he ran on. So far, the Iran operation hasn't won broad public backing. Core MAGA supporters unsurprisingly back it almost without question, but support among Republicans is notably lower than in past foreign engagements. 60% of Americans believe Trump does not have a clear plan for handling the situation, and 62% saying he should get congressional approval for any further military action, according to a CNN summary of the survey. Meanwhile, questions persist about the rationale for the engagement. If the war is ongoing, draining resources and costing U.S. lives by November, it is nothing but an albatross around Republicans' necks, and Trump's second-term fate will be all but sealed. History offers a warning. Former President George W. Bush surged in popularity after the 9/11 attacks and the invasion of Iraq in 2003. But as the war dragged on, loss of life and economic anxiety mounted at home, and public support eroded, reshaping the political landscape in the 2006 midterms and paving the way for Barack Obama's victory in 2008. Trump is now walking an eerily similar tightrope. Maintaining support for prolonged military engagement requires a narrative that connects foreign efforts to tangible benefits for ordinary Americans. If Trump hopes the Iran campaign becomes a defining moment of strength in his legacy, he has only a few months to show voters that the fight abroad hasn't come at the expense of the promises he made to Americans at home.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 29 minutes after the hour, and we will continue with our opinion pieces. Next, coming from John Crisp of the Tribune News Service. To understand Iran, start its history in the right place. In an effort to justify his war on Iran, President Trump turned to history. He begins with 1979, the year the Islamic Revolution deposed Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and replaced him with the government of the Ayatollah Khomeini. Iran has been a problem ever since. 47 years of repressive theocratic rule hasn't been good for the Middle East. Iran or Iranians, especially women, the LGBTQ plus, and dissidents. The regime projection of power through proxies has caused considerable disorder and death. Yes, it's a bad regime, and the last 47 years have provided Trump with a plausible rationale for striking Iran. Few, outside Iran at least, mourn the assassination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. But if you start thinking about Iranian history in 1979, you can rationalize nearly anything, even an illegal, unprovoked attack on a sovereign nation. In fact, Iranian history dates back 25,000 years to the Persian Empire of Cyrus the Great. Modern Iranians take considerable pride in their history. This complicates their reaction to Trump's attack. Many love their country more than they hate the regime. They won't take kindly to having their government, their military, and their infrastructure destroyed, especially by an impertinent upstart such as the United States, which has been around for a mere 250 years. Even more important, most Iranians know a lot more about relations between the U.S. and Iran during the last century than vice versa. These are the pre-1979 events Trump didn't mention. Trump pictures the United States as a long-suffering victim of Iran. It's never popular to blame the victim, but it's worth remembering that many Iranians, with considerable justification, see the sorry situation at which our two nations have arrived to be the result of the way the United States has treated Iran for over a century. Iran was always a better potential ally of the U.S. than other Middle Eastern countries, many of which are repressive monarchies, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for example. Iran's inclinations toward democracy date at least to 1905, when a revolution diminished monarchical power and established a parliament. But most Americans aren't familiar with the systemic subversion of democracy in Iran by Britain and the United States in favor of a Shah who would cater to their interests. The essential interest? Oil, of course. When Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh tried to take more control of Iranian oil in 1953, he was deposed by a CIA-backed coup that reestablished the power of Pahlavi, who ruled by terror, imprisonment, and torture. The revolution of 1979 became almost inevitable. Much of America's foreign policy since 1979 has been devoted to the sensible goal of preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. But is bombing the only way to achieve that goal? Political scientist Scott Sagan points out in the September-October 2006 issue of Foreign Affairs how to keep the bomb from Iran. That nations have concrete reasons for seeking nuclear weapons, and he argues credibly that they can be and have been talked out of it with diplomacy. President Barack Obama tried diplomacy in 2015. The U.S., Britain, France, Germany, Russia, China, and European Union reached an agreement with Iran. It was the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that severely limited Iran's ability to develop a nuclear bomb. By most accounts, the JCPOA was working. Trump's Defense Secretary Jim Mattis called the JCPOA's verification procedures robust, and he did not dispute the findings of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which confirmed Iran's compliance. Further, the agreement bolstered the standing of Iran's moderate president Hassan Rouhani. Trump's rejection of the JCPOA in 2018 gave the Iranian hardliners just what they wanted: a treacherous, deal-breaking, Shah-supporting external enemy. But this is what happens if we pretend that our history with Iran started in 1979. Trump's narrow view of history blinds him to the fact that Iran will not be easily bullied into unconditional surrender. He will have no part in choosing Iran's next leader. Iran's Revolutionary Guard will not meekly turn over their weapons to the Iranian people. Thus, this war is likely to be long, chaotic, and very deadly.
And our third and last opinion piece is by Ronald Brownstein from Bloomberg Opinion. Trump's war will certainly compound his affordability woes. The war with Iran is burning the clock on President Trump's chances for a reset with voters on the economy, and that increases the odds that his 2026 messaging will focus on disqualifying Democrats with polarizing wedge issues, a strategy that has mostly, though not entirely, failed for other presidents. With the midterm primaries underway, the biggest problem for Republicans is that most voters don't believe Trump has made much progress or even sufficiently focused on the problem they elected him to solve: high prices. In national polls, Trump's approval rating on the economy usually runs around 40% or below. That's a stark contrast from his first term, when it rarely fell below 50% after his first few months. Indeed, during his first term, Trump's approval rating on the economy almost always exceeded his overall job rating. It was a floor-lifting hymn, no matter what other controversies engulfed him. Now, attitudes about his economic performance almost always lag behind his overall rating, meaning it is an undertow pulling him down. Trump's advisors recognize this vulnerability and have put him in settings to allay voters' economic anxieties. But Trump's heart doesn't seem to be in it. The most prominent example was last month's State of the Union. Rather than acknowledging Americans' concerns about affordability, he took a victory lap, insisting that inflation was plummeting and the nation had entered a golden age. Trump did fleetingly discuss a few proposals aimed at bringing costs down, such as requiring artificial intelligence data farms to supply their own electrical power and banning corporate ownership of housing. But these bite-sized ideas were overshadowed by his insistence that he would revive his unpopular tariff policy despite the Supreme Court's decision against it. For voters, the economic consequences of the tariffs overwhelm all those other more modest ideas, said GOP pollster Whit Ayers. The war in Iran compounds Trump's economic challenge in two respects. The swift increase in oil prices is sure to worry voters about costs at the pump, which have been central to Trump's claim that he's solved inflation. The war also represents an enormous opportunity cost. As the calendar flips closer to November, each week Trump spends explaining the war is a week he's not delivering an economic message. If Trump is unable or unwilling to mount a sustained campaign to rebuild confidence in his economic management, how will he and the GOP contest the midterms? His State of the Union offered a clear signal. Trump came to life only when he unspooled a greatest hits revival of his sharpest culture war arguments from 2024, painting Democrats as both weak and extreme. These people are crazy, Trump insisted, while taunting Democrats over immigration, crime, and transgender rights. But historically, views of the out-of-power party have not influenced midterms nearly as much as assessments of the incumbent president. In 2018, national polls showed voters saw Republicans almost as favorably as Democrats, but the GOP still lost 41 House seats. In 2010, polls showed virtually no difference between the public's ratings for the two sides, and Republicans won 63 House seats. Both of those wave elections were driven by majority disapproval of the president's performance. Trump's in 2018, Barack Obama's in 2010. Last year's gubernatorial elections in Virginia and New Jersey upheld these patterns. Exit polls showed that nearly half of voters in each state viewed the Democratic Party unfavorably. In Virginia, the exit showed that exactly half the voters said support for transgender rights had gone too far. Yet Democrats Abigail Spanberger in Virginia and Mickey Sherrill in New Jersey each won double-digit victories, with over 90% of voters who disapproved of Trump supporting them. Culture war issues are not what the election is about this time, said Democratic pollster Jeff Guerin. We ran that experiment in Virginia and New Jersey. The most encouraging precedent for Trump may be the 2022 midterms. Democrats lost control of the House that year, but despite widespread disapproval of President Joe Biden's performance, the party limited its losses in federal and state races by portraying Republicans as extreme on social issues following the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade. That was an especially effective tactic for Democrats with college-educated suburban votes.
Policy check. Do you have enough insurance to rebuild your home? Here's how to tell. Your house isn't just a place to hang your hat, it's one of your most valuable financial assets. That's why homeowners without enough insurance can face financial ruin when disaster strikes and they find themselves suddenly homeless and unable to rebuild. People are surprised to find out what they're being paid for isn't enough to rebuild their home after a major loss. For example, 74% of those who filed insurance claims after the Marshall Fire, a costly wildfire that swept through Boulder, Colorado suburbs in December 2021, didn't have enough homeowners insurance to fully replace their home. Researchers found these homeowners were underinsured by an average of $139,000. The study, Coverage Neglect in Homeowners Insurance, analyzed 5,000 policyholders and concluded that many owners buy the amount of coverage their insurer suggests, which often isn't enough. Most people who lost their homes in the Marshall Fire had not begun to rebuild more than a year later. To avoid financial hardship if your home is destroyed, it's crucial to have enough insurance to rebuild. Rebuilding costs in the U.S. are rising year over year, especially in areas experiencing extreme weather. While building materials and labor are the foundation of rebuilding costs, those prices fluctuate for a few reasons. Inflation is always nipping at our financial heels. Price indexes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics show building materials were up 3.5% in 2025. Next, labor shortages. Contributing to higher rebuilding costs, the Home Builders Institute estimates $2.7 billion is lost annually in the U.S. due to delays caused by labor shortfalls. Next, natural disasters wreak havoc on many homes at once, causing demand for materials and labor in the affected region to skyrocket, leading to price hikes. Tariffs are more likely to inflate the cost of constructing a new home. However, some rebuilding expenses also get ratcheted up by those government-imposed import taxes. How to calculate rebuilding cost? The cost of rebuilding your home is not the same as its market value. What your house and the land it's on might fetch if you put it up for sale isn't the same as what it'll cost you to replace it from the ground up. Rebuilding costs aren't identical to what you'd spend to build a brand new home. Reconstructing a damaged house often includes extra steps like cleanup, demolition, site preparation, and dealing with hazardous materials. The median cost to rebuild a home in the U.S. is about $280 per square foot, based on analysis by NerdWallet, a 2025 data provided by First Street, a climate risk financial modeling firm. This translates to a rebuild cost of $410,000 for a typical sized American home. However, rebuilding costs can vary significantly state to state. For example, in New Jersey, the median cost per square foot is $330, while in Montana, you would pay about $240 per square foot to rebuild. One way to avoid underinsurance is by using an online rebuilding cost calculator that can provide a home replacement cost estimate based on materials and labor costs in your area. Another option is asking the local independent insurance agent who knows rebuilding prices or a general contractor near you who can give you a cost per square foot estimate. Here are steps to avoid being underinsured. Number 1, ensure you have enough dwelling coverage to rebuild. Figure out the current cost to replace your home and make sure your dwelling coverage limit reflects that amount. Check the amount each year and update it if needed when your policy renews. Number 2, consider extended or guaranteed replacement coverage. Home insurance companies offer extended or guaranteed replacement coverage, which sometimes costs extra. In the case of extended replacement coverage, you'll get anywhere from an extra 10 to 50% of your dwelling coverage amount to rebuild if needed. Guaranteed replacement cost provides whatever is needed to replace your home in its original condition, even if the amount exceeds your policy limits. Number 3, see if your policy includes Inflation Guard. Inflation Guard accounts for inflation by bumping up your policy's coverage limits and premiums each year, typically by a set percentage. Some insurers include this in standard homeowners policies. Number 4, shop for quotes. Shop around periodically to surface gaps in your insurance coverage and to secure a better rate. The new normal is having to pay more attention to your insurance. If not, you're just paying all of this money for something that isn't the safety net you were sold. Just as an aside, this story is not part of the printed Buffalo News. It comes to us online as a special edition.
VA probing issues with patients' access to providers. This is by CNN's Brian Todd. The wife of one veteran wanted her husband to be evaluated, fearing his cancer may have spread, and sought a radiology appointment last year with the Department of Veteran Affairs. She made multiple phone calls that went to voicemail last March and received no follow-up within the promised 24 hours, according to the VA's chief watchdog. That incident is just one documented by investigators of the VA's Inspector General's office, who are trying to get to the bottom of a long-standing complaint from the nation's veterans. They can't get through to their health care providers on the phone. The VA watchdog also discovered other cases when veterans were forced to drive to facilities in person for answers when they could not reach the VA staff to schedule or change appointments. The IG's office observed this firsthand during site visits at the VA facilities in Miami and Washington, D.C., where veterans told VA staff about their experiences. The Department of Veteran Affairs also has a hard time of determining the scope of the problem. The Inspector General's office, in a new preliminary advisory report, says it found that 13 of 15 VA medical facilities it sampled didn't have key data tracking patient calls. The report found that the 13 facilities didn't track what happened with the nearly 1 million of the 2.1 million calls attempted by veterans seeking specialized care over a 12-month period, spanning the Biden and Trump administrations. Many of the untracked calls were at VA clinics where patients seek radiology and mental health care. The report noted that those are patients who are at high risk of adverse health outcomes. Veterans trying to access care at those facilities reported that they faced delays, uncertainty, and frustration. Several veteran advocacy groups called the VA to address the issue. VA Press Secretary said in a statement to the CNN, "We appreciate the Inspector General's review, which highlights issues dating back to July 2024 during the Biden administration."
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Abu Antun Georges Wadad. Bechtold Ronald. Canistraro Nee Brownson Donna. Golumbek John, nicknamed Jim. Gray Patricia Nee Lambert. Meisner Mildred Lena, maiden name Hauk. O'Shea Carol Nee Nowicki. Prestia John. Tripp Alvin. Wheeler Patricia Nee Pittner. And Matt Snell, the powerful running back who scored the New York Jets' only touchdown in their Super Bowl win in 1969. He died at the age of 84. He died in his home on Long Island. Once again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555.
And now we'll go to our horoscopes, our royal stars. Happy birthday for Thursday, March 12th, 2026. By nature, you're competitive. You're also intuitive, inquisitive, and keen to explore new experiences. This is a year of learning and teaching. So in the Royal Stars horoscopes, the stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And doing a quick perusal, everybody is either average or so-so. So it's not the most positive. Aries, so-so. Trend carefully today because your interactions with bosses, parents, VIPs, and the police might not go well. Tonight, you're noticed. Taurus, average day. In discussion with others, avoid controversial subjects like politics, religion, and racial issues today. Tonight, explore and learn. Gemini, average day. When dealing with shared property, taxes, debt, or the responsibility for someone or something, you might take the lead because you feel confident and energetic. Tonight, check your finances. Cancer, a so-so day. Steer clear of parents, bosses, and authority figures to avoid disagreements today because you might want to express your opinions. Tonight, listen and cooperate. Leo, average day. Even though you might be gung-ho about something at work today or something perhaps related to your health or even a pet, tonight, work and get organized. Virgo, so-so day. Romantic relationships are difficult today, which means you need to be patient, tolerant, and thoughtful. Tonight, socialize. Libra, a so-so day. Today you have a lot of energy to work and get better organized. Nevertheless, relations with partners and close friends will be challenging. Tonight, relax at home. Scorpio, so-so day. You might be enthusiastic in your communication with others today, only to find out people disagree with you, especially at work. Tonight, enthusiastic conversations. Sagittarius, an average day. Romance, along with issues related to your kids, will be challenging for you today. Therefore, don't be demanding. Tonight, check your money. Capricorn, an average day. Today, the moon is in your sign, dancing with Mars, which gives you a take-charge energy. This is good. Tonight, you win. Aquarius, a so-so day. Today you are best served by keeping a low profile. Relax. Work alone or behind the scenes. Don't make a big deal about anything. Tonight, solitude. And Pisces, this is a so-so day. This is a tricky day because in one way, a friend might invigorate you and encourage you to take over a project or run the show. Tonight, be friendly.
From some short political notes. GOP leaving House in record numbers. The number of Republicans leaving the House of Representatives after this term has reached a historic high, deepening concern in the conference over the chamber's already razor-thin margins. 35 House Republicans are retiring or running for higher office. That's the most since at least 1930, according to data from the Brookings Institute, and surpasses the previous record from 2018, a midterm cycle when Republicans lost 40 House seats. There are 10 House Republicans running for governor this cycle, the most who have run from either party in the available data compiled by CNN dating back to 1974. Oklahoma Representative Kevin Kern became the latest member of the GOP to announce his departure Wednesday, hoping to fill Senator Mark Wayne Mullen's seat for a full term should Mullen be confirmed as Homeland Security Secretary. And child support data is sought by DHS. The Department of Homeland Security is seeking to gain access to federal information intended to support the collection of child support payments, but could potentially be used for immigration enforcement purposes, according to 3 sources similar with the talks. The data, which includes information on people who pay child support and employment information for a much wider universe of people, is stored within Health and Human Services Department. The request has prompted concerns among current and former HHS officials over whether Homeland Security should use legally restricted information that has historically been legally restricted for the administration's immigration crackdown. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, March 12th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Pat Lamont.
and Ruth Nowotniak, and we'll go to our City and Region section. This article is written by Sandra Tan, who's a news staff reporter. Seneca Babcock, Executive Director, resigns after revocation of nonprofit status. The Executive Director of the Seneca Babcock Community Association has resigned his position after public disclosure that the organization failed to submit any of its financial documents for the past 9 years to the Internal Revenue Service, jeopardizing a wide range of services that include a food pantry, senior services, and daycare. Organizations that fail to submit required 990 tax documents supporting their tax-exempt status for 3 years in a row are subject to having their charitable standing and nonprofit tax-exempt status revoked. As the individual responsible for ensuring our organization met its federal filing obligations, I failed to submit the required IRS Form 990 filings, said Executive Director Brian Pilarski, a Cheektowaga Town Board member. As a result, the organization's nonprofit tax-exempt status was revoked due to this lapse in compliance. I deeply regret the position this has placed the agency in and the concern it may cause for our community, partners, and supporters. Because of this failure, I have submitted my letter of resignation to the Board of Directors. The last time the Seneca Babcock Community Association turned in its 990 was in 2020 for the 2017 tax year, according to the IRS. Even then, however, the Bonadio and Company auditing firm refused to render an opinion regarding the association's 990 statement because, the firm said, detailed accounting records have not been maintained and supporting data was not available to complete the audit, with the exception of cash. According to the Erie County Comptroller's Office, the county has given $2.29 million to the Seneca Babcock Community Association since 2019. The city has also provided support for the association, which operates several facilities, including the Seneca Babcock Community Center, Hennepin Community Center, George K. Arthur Community Center, Schiller Park Community Services, and Arlene Mahila Community Center. City spokesman Ian Ott said Buffalo has given the association $2.5 million since 2017. He also said Deputy Mayor Maria White met with the city and county department heads Wednesday morning to develop a plan to keep neighborhood services going while the community association struggles to get its fiscal house in order. The issue came to light after Kaisertown resident Rachel Eckert posted about the association's failure to submit its financial records on her own Facebook account and the private concerns of the town of Cheektowaga Taxpayers Group. She also posted her findings to TikTok. She told the Buffalo News that she and her children used to utilize daycare services at the Seneca Babcock Community Center. She began looking into the community association about a month and a half ago, she said. Erie County legislator Frank Todaro of Lancaster said he saw Eckert's post and sent letters to Attorney General Letitia James and State Controller Thomas DiNapoli, asking that they further investigate and audit the matter and determine whether there was any potential abuse or mismanagement of taxpayer money. Todaro also expressed deep concern about those who contribute to the association, believing their contributions to be tax exempt. Anyone that's been donating, we're talking not even hundreds or thousands, Todaro said, we're talking millions of dollars over the years during this timeline, they're going to be liable and susceptible to paying taxes on that money. In an email to the Buffalo News, Pilarski said the association is currently trying to correct the situation, but that it will take time. The organization is working to complete and file the missing 990 forms and requesting retroactive reinstatement of the association's tax-exempt status. That process could take more than half a year, he said. Meanwhile, County Legislature Lawrence Dupree of Buffalo and Common Council member Brian Bowman, whose districts include the Seneca Babcock neighborhood, said they want financial reporting issues straightened out, but their immediate concern is ensuring that neighborhood residents don't lose out on critical community services because of a compliance issue. Bowman called the association the largest provider of community services in his district by far. I'm just concerned about keeping programming going and any interruptions to this very important programming that impacts my district, he said. You're talking youths and seniors. They have some food pantries, some daycare services at all these centers. Pilarski said the failure to submit financial documents is an oversight, not a sign of criminal wrongdoing. I want to be absolutely clear about one thing. There has been no theft, misuse of funds, or personal gain involved, he said. I understand that trust must be supported by transparency and verification, and I fully welcome the audits and financial reviews of our 990s that will take place for the missing years. I'm confident these reviews will demonstrate that the agency's finances were handled appropriately and that this issue stems from my failure in compliance, not from any wrongdoing. He also said he sent a separate email to the Community Association's funders, taking responsibility and presenting some options to try to keep services going. I cannot apologize enough for this failure, he said in his message. For the past 20 years, I have given my best to this agency and the communities we serve. I had too many responsibilities in motion, and this critical compliance requirement was not met. I take full responsibility, and I am deeply sorry. Dupree said he believes Pilarski's failure to file represents a compliance failure, not a scandal, but also said a comprehensive and independent financial review must still be done.
Changes coming as Kenton deals with $8 million deficit. The Kenmore-Tonawanda School District would look very different under a proposal unveiled Tuesday that would close one elementary school, reopen two others, and shift where grade levels are taught throughout the system. Canton Superintendent Sabatino Simato said the restructuring is needed to deliver the best education to the greatest number of students at a sustainable cost. The district faces an annual deficit of nearly $8 million and loses 20% of its prospective students to charter and private schools, Simato said at Tuesday's school board meeting. The proposed reconfiguration would overturn some changes made in 2016 when the district closed 3 schools and moved 8th and 5th graders to different buildings. The potential closing of Holmes Elementary School has stirred considerable opposition. Holmes parents and alumni say the school anchors the Riverview and Sheridan Parkside neighborhoods, and losing it would devastate the families and students it serves. Simato agreed shuttering Holmes would be painful, but said the district faces numerous difficult decisions as it seeks firmer footing in the years ahead. Let there be no mistake, there are a lot of positives to the idea, but there are a lot of hardships to this idea, and right now it's an idea, he said. Here's more on what we know about the district's proposal, what's driving it, and what happens next. The Kenton district would close Holmes and reopen 2 previously shuttered elementary schools, Roosevelt and Hamilton. The district would move 8th grade, now located at its 2 high schools, back to its 2 middle schools. Hoover and Franklin, which would serve 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, 5th grade, now taught at the middle school level, would shift back to elementary school. Hoover and Franklin elementary schools would serve 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades. And the newly opened Roosevelt and Hamilton elementary schools, along with Lindbergh and Edison elementary schools, would serve universal pre-kindergarten through 2nd. What's behind it? First, the district spends more than it takes in, Simato said. With Canton officials working to address a $7.9 million deficit as they prepared the 26-27 school budget. Samato noted little new residential or retail development has come to the town, especially when compared with the growth in the neighboring Sweet Home Central School District, meaning the tax burden falls primarily on existing property owners. The district also wants to boost enrollment in its UPK program, which is now in a single building, the former Hamilton School, where students are not taught by Kenton unionized teachers. Samato said he wants to avoid staff and teacher layoffs at all costs, but Kenton's leaders must find new, more efficient ways to serve the district students. We have to look at some of the harsh realities, he said. The emphasis of Samato's remarks was winning back students whose families sent them to charter or private schools. Samato said the town of Tonawanda has a disproportionate number of those institutions. He singled out Charter School for Applied Technologies and St. Amelia's School as strong competitors for the district's school-age children. Samato showed the audience at Tuesday's meeting a map of the town peppered with dots representing each family in Kenton that sends one child or more to a non-district school. The district wants to reach those families when their children are as young as possible. That's one reason why he's pushing to create early education centers, the UPK through second schools in neighborhoods like that surrounding the former Hamilton School, where more families send their children to outside schools. If we don't look at it as a competition, we've already lost, Samato said. Many proposed changes would overturn elements of Kenton's last round of restructuring from 2016. That district overhaul closed Kenmore Middle School and Roosevelt and Hamilton elementary schools. It also moved 5th grade to the middle schools and 8th grade to the high schools. Samato, who was not in the district at the time, said it's clear some of the changes turned out to be mistakes. He said 8th grade students are better taught in a 6th through 8th middle school, where they can develop stronger leadership skills before arriving at high school for a true freshman year. Samato said he knows why some changes were made a decade ago. District leaders sought a way to keep both high schools open as desired by the community, but have not aged well. Students have too many transitions between schools at awkward points in their lives, Samato said, from UPK to kindergarten, 4th to 5th, and 7th to 8th, making the district unappealing to some students and parents. If we don't talk about the structure, we're lying to ourselves, he said. Samato said Holmes has one of the lowest populations in the district and a higher proportion of special education students who would be better served if distributed throughout Kenton. He added, without providing details, that the district has a potential tenant that will lease the Holmes building if the school becomes available. This could make up for the loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars in annual revenue when a Stanley Falk School, which serves children with special needs, moves from the Roosevelt site to the former St. Andrews School. He said he would like to keep Holmes open, but there's no way to make it work financially. I can't ignore the numbers, he said. Parents and alumni had learned of the potential school closing after Samato made a presentation to Holmes staff last week and urged the school community to attend Tuesday's meeting.
Western New York schools embrace take-home meals for Muslim students observing Ramadan. This is written by Ben Tujimoto, a new staff reporter. Extra work is required for Cheektowaga Central School's food department to pack 100 extra meals each day, but the overall effort and purpose are worth it, district leaders say. Cheektowaga joined 65 other New York State school districts this year in signing a waiver to allow Muslim students to take home prepackaged breakfast and lunch during Ramadan, which runs February 17th through March 19th, so they can eat after sunset and before sunrise. We've had an increase in diverse families joining our district in the last few years, and many are Arabic, said Scott Zipp, Cheektowaga Central Superintendent. Cheektowaga is one of the newest local participants, while public schools in Buffalo and Lackawanna have participated since 2024, when the waiver through the State Education Department and the U.S. Department of Agriculture was first offered. Buffalo has packaged as many as 2,000 take-home meals a day during previous Ramadans. Lackawanna added that its participation stems primarily from Martin Elementary, where 150 students take part, and Lackawanna Middle School, where 80 students take home meals. For constitutional and anti-discriminatory reasons, schools generally do not collect religious data, so it's difficult to tell what population of students affected by the waiver have taken part. Only 13 school districts applied for the waiver to offer non-congregate meals in 2024, according to state data, but 34 participated last year before nearly doubling this year. The federal waiver is only effective during the observance of Ramadan and only for students who are fasting and present at school on the day congregate meals are offered. Williamsville, Sweet Home, Depew, Kenton, Cheektowaga, Maryvale, and a handful of area charter schools have also received approval to offer take-home meals. At Depew, no student had taken part in the first week they were available, but the district takes dietary restrictions seriously, frequently offering a hummus lunch as a halal-friendly meal, a spokesperson said in a statement. At Cheektowaga Central, Zip says he's grateful for the work of Ann Colazzo, who runs the food service department, and her team for how they accommodate students who take home meals. They want to do it, he said. They still have to serve food throughout the whole day, so this is an extra layer. And you can't pack up things like French toast sticks, so sometimes they have to make something else. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 15 minutes past the hour. I forgot that I was doing... I'm sorry.
Were just carried away.
I was. Sorry, listeners. And we'll go to our sports page. Our first article is by Mike Harrington. It's on the Sabres. Sabres reached level of consistency not seen in franchise history. The Stanley Cup finalists of 1975 and 1999 never did this. Neither did the beloved 2006ers, the President's Trophy group of 2007, or Scotty Bowman's first team of 1979-80 that lost to the New York Islanders' initial championship team in the Cup semifinals. The Buffalo wagon of 2026 just keeps rolling along. After a 6-3 skewering of the San Jose Sharks on Tuesday at KeyBank Center, the Sabres will host Alex Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals on Thursday night, riding an unbelievable wave. They have won 8 straight games for the second time this season, and that's never been done in franchise history in the same year. The first stretch ended January 3rd in Columbus after 10 wins in a row. And the end of this one is still very much up in the air. With all the East contenders off on Wednesday, the Sabres were able to sit in front on their sudden 4-point lead in the Atlantic Division that emerged after the Tampa Bay Lightning lost at home to Columbus 5-2. The Sabres remain just 2 points behind Carolina for the conference lead after the Hurricanes' shootout win over Pittsburgh. Coach Lindy Ruff authored concern about the visit by Sharks as soon as Sunday's Classic against Tampa Bay was over. How do you come down from that kind of high and be ready to play a team you haven't seen in more than a year? It turned out to be no problem. That's just the character in this room, said nightly Nat Zach Benson. We're a pretty confident bunch and competitive too. As it turned out, Ruff had no worries. The Sabres roared out of the first period starting gate with goals by Jack Quinn and Alex Took, and the Sharks never caught up. Buffalo was too loose with the puck at times, with plays that will get the Sabres burned in the playoffs, but still always had an answer to maintain its lead. It's been that way since the Sabres returned from the Olympic break. 8 straight wins, an NHL high 36 goals for and only 20 against. Out of town Tuesday was a ridiculously fortunate night. Tampa Bay lost to Columbus. Florida's Carter Verhaeghe scored twice in the last 90 seconds, including the game winning with 14 ticks left on the clock, as Florida pulled out the rug from Detroit to win 4-3. And Montreal beat the falling Leafs 3-1 to hand Toronto its 8th straight loss. A juicy aside, if the Sabres beat Washington here Thursday and the Leafs keep skidding at home against Anaheim, what a mind-boggling scenario we could have downtown on Saturday. The Sabres would be once again going for a 10th straight win, looking to become just the 5th team in NHL history to do that twice in the same season, while the Leafs could hit their first 10-game winless streak since 2015. Memo to Leaf fans: there's going to be lots of Sabres fans looking to take your tickets off your hands. As for Tuesday's affair, Quinn had his first career hat trick in the game, and there was plenty to like elsewhere as well. There was more backing up of teammates, with Benson jumping in and on San Jose defenseman Dmitry Orlov after a scummy hit on Tage Thompson that was scary close to giving the Buffalo Star a wounded knee. Logan Stanley, the 6'7" behemoth acquired from Winnipeg, got his visa issues settled, and the decision was made a scant 4 hours before face-off to throw him in the lineup. He threw down with San Jose's Zach Ostapchuk, and that got the sellout crowd in a lather, as if they were already preparing for Stanley to settle some business with Tampa Bay's Brandon Hagel during the team's final meeting on April 6th. Beck Melanson came close to a Gordie Howe hat trick, taking on Barclay Goodrow in a spirited bout while answering a clean hit on Sharks wonderkin Macklin Celebrini, and scoring on a tremendous solo effort as he walked San Jose defenseman Sam Dickerson. Just needed the assist for the Howe, but added 5 hits too. Following the pregame skate, Melanson and I were bantering about the Tampa Bay game, and we both quickly acknowledged the question the Sabres had to answer in the wake of the 8-7 thriller. I don't know if you can match that kind of energy again. That was pretty special 3-hour hockey game, Melanson said. Ruff loves talking about one game at a time, and while it's the classic coach's cliche, I'll be darned, it really means something for this club. I wish I had $1 this year for every time Ruff has talked about just winning the next game. He's always looking ahead and doesn't want to look back much, and I bet he would demand $1 back from me if I dare to talk about the Leafs before Friday. All these one-game-in-a-row tricks sure make a nice pile of history. Onward.
After helping Allen, Bills boost pass rush. This is by Lance Lasowski. As we wait to see how the Buffalo Bills build out the rest of their roster, especially on defense, do not overlook the reason behind 3 of the prominent moves that have occurred over the past week. First, General Manager and President of Football Operations Brandon Beane traded a second-round draft pick to the Chicago Bears for veteran receiver DJ Moore and a 5th-round selection. The Bills also handed Moore, who has totaled 1,000 receiving yards 4 times during his 8-year career, more guaranteed money to lower his salary cap hit. Next, the Bills finally re-engaged in contract talks with their starting center, Connor McGovern, and the two sides eventually completed a 4-year pact that ensures Josh Allen won't need to spend time this offseason developing chemistry with arguably the most important person on his offensive line. Finally, Beane completed a new contract for veteran tight end Dawson Knox, a reliable target and blocker who's one of Allen's closest friends. Later this spring, the Bills will pick up the 5th-year option for tight end Dalton Kincaid. Don't underestimate the superstar quarterback influence on one Bills drive. Beane oversees the team's football operations. Allen didn't pick Joe Brady as head coach or negotiate a contract for a new nickel cornerback D. Alford. But make no mistake, Buffalo's superstar is on Beane's mind during each step of the season. How did the Bills respond when they lost their backup quarterback Mitch Trubisky to Brian Daboll of the Tennessee Titans? Being brought back Kyle Allen, who's a close friend of Allen and fit perfectly in Buffalo's quarterback room in 2023. This team does not need to spend $5 to $7 million on a backup. How did Brady make sure that his duties as head coach don't impact Allen's preparation each week this season? The Bills' choice for offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael worked closely with Drew Brees in New Orleans and assisted a future Hall of Fame play-calling head coach Sean Payton. The quarterback's coach, meanwhile, is Bo Hardegree, an experienced offensive mind who interviewed for coordinator positions this offseason. To add more insight, the Bills retained practice squad quarterback Shane Buechele, who has the makings of a future head coach, and they hired former Penn State signal caller Trace McSorley to work under Hardegree. This is not a case of quarterback overreaching or a franchise foolishly catering to someone who doesn't deserve a seat at the table. The Bills are among the NFL's destination franchises because of him. If the team is trying to lure a free agent, Allen typically gets on the phone to deliver a sales pitch. Last week, he called McGovern ahead of free agency and helped broker the lineman's return. Then Allen agreed to restructure his contract to create $12 million in cap space. The move helped the Bills land a marquee free agent Wednesday when they signed two-time Pro Bowl edge rusher Bradley Chubb on a 3-year, $45.5 million contract that includes as much as $29 million guaranteed. Chubb, 29, had 8.5 sacks for the Dolphins in 25, and he led the team with 54 quarterback pressures, according to Next Gen Stats in 2023. He had 11 sacks. Chubb fits the Bills' new 3-4 scheme as a complement to Greg Rousseau. The past two Super Bowl champions won the penultimate game because of their relentless defenses. The Bills are trying to build one this offseason with a coach whose scheme is drastically different than the one Sean McDermott had for 9 seasons. But being explained that Buffalo's new defensive coordinator, Jim Leonhard, sees enough talent to make this work without a complete overhaul. Chubb should be better at stopping the run than Joey Bosa.
Kelce returns to the Chiefs. Travis Kelce will be back catching passes from Patrick Mahomes for the Kansas City Chiefs one more time. The Chiefs made official their deal to bring the 4-time All-Pro tight end back for a 14th season Wednesday, when the new league year made pending contracts official. The 36-year-old Kelce had decided in recent days to shove off retirement for another year rather than end a superlative career that includes 3 Super Bowl rings with a 6-11 record this past season. The one-year deal for Kelce is worth $12 million, with incentives that could push the total to $15 million. Kelce had indicated as far back as the NFL scouting combine that he wanted to play for Kansas City if he returned. He also said his fiancée, pop superstar Taylor Swift, played a role in his decision to return. Around the league, quarterback Daniel Jones plans to stay with the Indianapolis Colts for at least 2 more years. The two sides agreed to a new contract. The Washington Commanders are signing edge rusher Kavlon Chaisson and linebacker Leo Chenal. Chaisson's deal for next season is worth $12 million. The 25-year-old was part of Kansas City's Super Bowl winning team in the 2023 season. Quarterback Geno Smith returned to the New York Jets, who acquired him in a trade with Las Vegas. The Raiders could have been in position to release Smith, but Las Vegas worked out a swap to later round selections with the Jets, who get a 7th rounder while giving up a 6th round choice. Detroit reached agreement to add running back Isaiah Pacheco as a replacement for David Montgomery after the Lions traded Jamar Gibbs back up last week before the negotiating window opened. Pacheco spent his first 4 seasons in the running back position with the Kansas City Chiefs. New England picked up one of the top available receivers in Romeo Doubs, agreeing with the former Green Bay player on a $70 million 4-year contract. The Patriots also added Gar Elijah Vera Tucker on a $42 million 3-year deal. And New York Giants co-owners Steve Laurie and Jonathan Tisch want to transfer their shares of the NFL club to their children's trusts, according to a league memo that was obtained by the Associated Press. That's it. You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 30 minutes past the hour, and we will go see what Asking Eric has to say. Fitness class nemesis won't stop pestering during workouts. Dear Eric, I am a recently retired woman who is appreciating my morning routine at the gym. I love the group exercise classes. My issue is with one woman who insists on counting very loudly with the instructor, slipping in loud singing with the music, and thinking she is entertaining the class. She does it during every class twice a week. The first few months of classes, I let it slide. I finally, diplomatically, took her aside and told her that her loud counting and singing is very distracting to some of us taking the class. I told her she doesn't have to stop, but just be considerate of the volume she uses because some of us find it distracting, especially during our balancing exercises. She couldn't believe I would say that to her and told some of her friends in class. I'm not the only one who doesn't appreciate her behavior. She has been in class sporadically since, and when she comes, she still counts, sings, and now yells out, "Did you miss me? What can you recommend other than grin and bear it?" The Count's enemy. Dear the Count's enemy, wow, this is so enervating. Geez, I don't think.
That's a made-up word.
Enervating. And her response? Yikes. What you did is what I would suggest to anyone else in your situation. You communicated clearly about your experience. You were fair and not demanding. For her to respond with childish taunts suggests there's something else going on with her, something that may go beyond being diplomatic. Because she presumably pays her gym dues, and also presumably this kind of behavior isn't explicitly against the rules of the gym, your hands are a bit tied. However, I'd talk to the instructor, express your discomfort, and ask for help. They might have a bit more leverage to keep the class in line. Dear Eric, my husband's friend recently started to kiss me on the lips when greeting me. This never happened before in all the years we've known each other. I don't like it. His lips are cold and slimy. My husband doesn't kiss his wife in greeting. How can I get him to stop without hurting his feelings? Forced into sloppy kiss. Dear Forrest, his feelings are his responsibility in this case. You can and should be clear with him about where he's crossing the line. What's most important is that you are able to express your bodily autonomy and be heard and respected. So say to him, I've noticed that you're starting to kiss me on the lips. I'm not comfortable with that. I'd like to greet each other like this instead. And here you can choose a greeting that makes you most comfortable. A hug, a handshake, a wave. You don't have to be kissed if you don't want to be kissed. You don't have to be touched if you don't want to be touched. And you've expressed yourself. Ask him if he understands. If he does it again after agreeing to stop, you'll know you have a trust issue with this person, and you'll need to put more physical distance between you. Dear Eric, this is in reference to Ruffled by Guest, who invited a new acquaintance to a small dinner party and was offended that the acquaintance wasn't very responsive in one-on-one conversation. Great question from a reader, and your response was very helpful to the writer. During my 42-year career, I engaged with CEO and president-level individuals for a multi-billion-dollar corporation. My greatest learning came from a CEO in 1988. While talking with him to gain understanding of his role in the investigation complaint, he told me meeting someone new tends to bring out interview skills versus conversation skills. It sounded to me the host of the party kept pressing questions first, like an interviewer. Sounds like the guests didn't understand the purpose of the lunch was to become friends versus a nice little meal together. Thanks for considering a different perspective. Communication is key. Dear communication, figuring out whether you're conducting or the subject of an interview or a conversation is a crucial distinction. There's nothing wrong with either, but sometimes we'll think that we're not getting what we want from a conversation, and it's helpful to stop and ask, am I actually conducting an interview? Now, of course, it takes two to have a conversation. Sometimes the other person just isn't engaged. It could be about vibe and connection, or it could be related to the circumstances. This brings me to your second point. When hosting, it's helpful to make clear what your hopes and intentions are for the gathering, and to make space for other people's hopes and intentions. There's nothing wrong with stating it up top. I had hoped to have you all over so that we could be better friends.
In our first live feature, Faked Out, AI-created war content spreading wildly on social media. After Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, social media was littered with crude fakes that were presented as fresh images of the war, but were either Photoshop phonies or mislabeled clips from video games, movies, past incidents, and unrelated news coverage. Those kinds of old-fashioned fakes are now spreading again during the war against Iran. This time, they have been joined by deception that wasn't readily available in 2022. High-quality videos and still images custom created with easy-to-use artificial intelligence tools. 10 years ago, said Hani Farid, a University of California, Berkeley professor specializing in digital forensics, there'd be like one or two fake things out there. They'd get debunked pretty fast. Now you see hundreds of them, and they're really realistic. It's not just realistic, it's landing hard. People believe it, and they're amplifying it. What has changed in the last year or so is that generative AI has become much more widely accessible, said BBC Verify senior journalist Shayan Sardareza, I'm not going to go there, a prominent debunker of war-related fakes. And it's now possible to create very believable videos and images appearing to show a significant war incident that is hard to detect to the untrained or naked eye. Fake videos and images identified as AI created have racked up tens of millions of views on social media platforms in the nearly 2 weeks since the Iran war began. One fake video shows a fictional barrage of Iranian missiles supposedly striking Tel Aviv, Israel. A second fake video depicts panicked people fleeing a supposed Iranian attack on an airport in Tel Aviv. A third fake video purports to show captured U.S. Special Forces personnel being held at gunpoint by Iranian troops. Phony still images that appear AI created, meanwhile, claim to depict a U.S. military base in Iraq and the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia burning after Iranian attacks. Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei lying dead under rubble, and Iranians mourning dead civilians. A publication linked to the Iranian government even posted a fake satellite image purporting to show damage to a U.S. military base in Bahrain. Despite daily debunking efforts from people like Sharda Zirada, new fakes are popping up far faster than they can be swatted down. They're often lifelike enough that the average person scrolling through their feed can't quickly spot that they're phony. Several fakes that have spread widely have been pushed as propaganda by pro-Iran social media accounts. The motivation behind the creation of many of the fakes, though, is hard to identify. Perhaps social media views and the influence and money they can sometimes lead to, perhaps just because people were able to make them easily. The increasingly sophisticated trickery is being tossed into a difficult environment for the truth. Partisan polarization, media fragmentation, and the rise of social media algorithms means that many Americans tend to primarily see material shared by like-minded people. And Fareed noted that social media companies have turned away from aggressive moderation of the content on their platforms. The content is more realistic, the volume is higher, the penetration is deeper. This is our new reality, and it's really messy, he said. Social media platform X announced last week that it was taking some action to combat wartime AI fakes. Head of product Nikita Beer posted that users who get paid by X as content creators spread AI-generated videos of armed conflicts without disclosing the videos were made with AI. They will be suspended from the payment program for 90 days and then permanently suspended if they commit additional violations. Even if this policy is strictly enforced, Fareed said he is skeptical. The overwhelming majority of X users are not part of the creator payment program. Social media companies TikTok and Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, did not respond to CNN requests for comment on the spread of fakes related to the war. As Sarda Rizadeh has noted for months, that X's own AI chatbot, Grok, has actively made the problem worse in some cases, wrongly telling users seeking facts checks that numerous AI-created images and videos, including some depicting the Iran war, are real. In fairness, it's hard these days to discern real life from fake. Fareed said a rapid improvement in the quality of AI creations means that tips from even months ago on how to spot AI fakery are not useful today. For example, it used to be helpful to check whether a person in an image had extra fingers or misplaced limbs. The humans represented in current AI content tend to be free of those types of comical errors. Fareed said the best way to remain accurately informed is to make a chase to get your news from credible journalistic outlets instead of scrolling through posts from random accounts on social media. In moments of global conflict, he said, this is not a place to get information. For those of us who can't avoid frequent scrolling, it's wise to take a beat and do even a few seconds of online searching before believing or sharing a sensational wartime video or image. Does anything seem off about it? Audio out of sync with video? Usual features that don't match the real world? AI is getting better, but is still imperfect, and some AI creations still have watermarks identifying the software that made them. Has a well-known debunker, a fact-checking media outlet, or a subject matter expert addressed the veracity of the video or image? If it's fake, some professional has often pointed that out before it reaches your feed. Are there people raising skepticism in the replies to a post on X's community notes? Average users can deceive, but they can also ask good questions. And what do free AI detection tools say? They're far from perfect, but they can sometimes help. Sardarizadeh said we would be should be training our eyes to recognize AI material as best as possible. But he also said it is becoming extremely difficult to detect AI-generated content, and the trajectory appears to be heading in the direction of it becoming even more difficult soon.
Distrust pushing some blue states to protect polling locations and records, and this is an Associated Press article. Democratic-led states alarmed by the prospect of federal immigration officers patrolling the polls during this year's midterms are taking steps to counter what they see as a potential tactic to intimidate voters. New Mexico this week became the first state to bar armed agents from polling locations in response to President Trump's immigration crackdown, a step being considered in at least a half dozen other Democratic-led states. The moves highlighted deep distrust toward the Trump administration from blue states, which have been the target of his aggressive immigration tactics, threatened with military deployments and subject to deep cuts in federal funding. Their concerns were heightened after the president suggested he wants to nationalize U.S. elections, even though the Constitution said it's the states that run elections. The Trump administration says it has no plans to deploy immigration agents to polling locations. Last month, the heads of Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Border Patrol told a congressional committee, "No, sir," when asked if they had any plans to guard polling places. The Department of Homeland Security's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Election Integrity, Heather Honey, recently told secretaries of state that it's simply not true that immigration agents will be at the polls this year. But a group of 8 secretaries of state want that in writing from the nominee to succeed Kristi Noem as Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. In a letter Monday to Trump's new pick to lead the agency, Markwayne Mullin, the group pressed for assurances that ICE will not have a presence at polling locations during the 2026 election cycle. Federal law prohibits the deployment of armed federal forces to election locations unless necessary to repel armed enemies of the United States, but Democratic lawmakers, election officials, and governors remain concerned. The fear is that Trump administration will attempt to evoke a national emergency or execute some other deployment of federal agents or military troops in order to interfere with elections and intimidate voters, said Representative Matt Blumenthal from Connecticut, and co-author of a state bill to establish a 250-foot buffer from federal agents at local polls and other restrictions on federal intervention. And we're not going to let that happen. Other bills seeking to ban immigration agents from the polls are pending in Democratic-led states, large and small, from California to Rhode Island. In Virginia, lawmakers are weighing legislation that could prevent federal civil immigration officials from making arrests within 40 feet of any polling place or courthouse. But the provision on polling sites remains under negotiation, and it's unclear whether it will be in the final bill. The newly signed law in New Mexico prohibits orders that put any armed person in the civil, military, or naval service of the United States at local polling locations and related parking areas, or within 50 feet of a monitored ballot box from the start of early voting. Under New Mexico's new law, which takes effect in May and will be in place for the state's June 2 primary, people who experience intimidation or obstruction at the polls from federal agents or military personnel can file a civil lawsuit seeking relief in state courts. State prosecutors and local and state election officials can also sue, and the courts can apply fines up to $50,000 per violation. It also prohibits changes to voting qualifications and election rules and procedures that conflict with New Mexico law, as Trump prods the U.S. Senate to approve a bill to impose strict new proof of citizenship requirements in elections nationwide. Any state measures intended to counter federal election law will face legal hurdles because of the supremacy clause in the United States Constitution, which says federal law supersedes state law. It could set up a direct clash between state governments and the federal government, We don't know exactly how that's going to go, said Richard Hessen, director of the Safeguarding Democracy Project at the UCLA School of Law. Given the Supremacy Clause, there's only so much states can do. New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham said her own distrust of the Trump administration in election oversight stems from ongoing Department of Justice efforts to get detailed state voter data without explaining why, and Trump's continuing false claims of widespread fraud in the 2020 presidential election. Do I believe the federal government and people in the White House? No, said Lujan Grisham, who terms out of office at the end of 2026. We are sending a message to everyone. We will hold free and fair elections, and New Mexicans will be safe in every ballot location, and that's our responsibility, the Democrats said Tuesday during a news conference. The Constitution says the states run their elections, and that bill makes it painfully clear to the federal government. New Mexico Republicans, who are in the minority in the legislature, voted in unison against the bill. I would question strongly why we have to do this other than to just have a poke at the president in the eyes, said GOP Senator Bill Shearer of Farmington during a floor debate. State Senator Kathy Duhigg, an Albuquerque Democrat who was a co-sponsor of the legislation, said it's better safe than sorry with democracy. She said she wanted to make sure that there was some sort of tool that our local law enforcement would have at their disposal if something does happen, if the federal government does in some manner try to interfere with our elections. Connecticut's bill, scheduled for a hearing later this week, also takes aim at federal attempts to seize ballots or other election material. It would require that state officials receive notification of such a move. Blumenthal said state legislators can't prevent seizures such as the January search by the FBI on an election center in Fulton County, Georgia, a Democratic stronghold that includes Atlanta. But he says there might be an opportunity for our state attorney general's office or the Secretary of State's office to challenge that.
Some states renew a push for wealthy to pay more taxes. Chuck Collins figures he won life's lottery by inheriting vast sums of money through his great-grandfather Oscar Mayer's processed meat company. But rather than fight to protect every dime, Collins has helped push to hike taxes on the ultra-rich like himself. He was successful in helping implement a higher tax in Massachusetts on income over $1 million, and the idea has taken hold in a handful of blue states, including California, Maryland, Minnesota, New Jersey. Lawmakers in the state of Washington, which doesn't have an income tax, could send the governor this week a measure that would impose one on million-dollar earners. I think people are waking up to the harms of these inequalities, said Collins, a founding member of the group Patriotic Millionaires, which calls for higher taxes on the country's super affluent, including people who have wealth, who say if we keep going down this road, it ain't going to end well for anybody. Since a state Supreme Court decision nearly a century ago got shot down on income tax, Washington has stood out as being one of the few states controlled by Democrats without a tax on wages or salaries, though it does tax certain investment proceeds. Facing a budget shortage, lawmakers are debating a proposal that would create nearly 10% annual tax on personal earnings over $1 million. If adopted, the tax would collect billions of dollars of new revenue that would be designated to pay for free K-12 school meals, child care services, a family tax credit, and eliminate sales taxes on personal care items such as shampoo. The State House adopted it this week after an all-night session deliberating amendments to the proposal. Now it goes back to the Senate, which passed a version previously. Democratic Governor Bob Ferguson has indicated support if the legislature, which is controlled by his party, can send it to him before it adjourns on Thursday. Washington is a state that has had an extremely regressive tax structure for 93 years. House Majority Leader Joe Fitzgibbon, a Democrat, said in an interview. It falls very heavily on working and middle-class people in our state. We don't need to be a tax haven, he said. Others, including GOP lawmakers, cautioned that taxes on the wealthy are not a comprehensive solution to addressing worrisome state revenues and can drive away businesses. Colin Hathaway, a millionaire businessman in Washington, said he's concerned the proposed tax would treat the money earned by his roofing company as income, even though he's putting most of it back into the business. He was already hit by the state's previous move to hike capital gains taxes and said an additional tax would force him to move away from the state where his high school-aged children grew up. There's a strong incentive to not be doing business here, he said. If the measure is adopted, it's likely to be challenged in court and with a ballot measure. With affordability a hot topic in state houses this session, a handful of progressive states are at least considering some kind of wealth tax. Perhaps the most ambitious is taking place in California, a state that already taxes its millionaire class. Advocates are working on a ballot measure that would place a one-time 5% tax on the assets of those with a $1 billion net worth. The proposal, backed by a large healthcare union, would use the extra revenue to backfill federal funding cuts to health services for lower-income people that were signed by President Trump last year. For critics, California's effort is the latest example of how the push to tax the rich in the U.S. is now backed by those who believe excessive wealth should be reduced or even erased, said Jared Walczak, a senior fellow at the Tax Foundation.
The state ready to host Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, New York City. Local and Western New Yorker lawmakers on both sides of the political aisle want to form a committee to explore the return of the Olympic Winter Games to New York for the first time since 1980. The state would host either the 2038 or 2042 games, but that the latter was the more realistic scenario. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, March 12th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Nowotniak, and thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.